Al Jazeera Podcasts.
A note for today's episode. It contains mention of abuse and sexual assault. Today, an insider's take on the lasting legacy of the Diddy sex trafficking case.
When you meet a celebrity, you think you know who they are, or you watch them and you study their career, but we don't really know what people are doing behind closed doors.
Is the case against American rapper Sean Diddy Combs an indictment of the entire U.S. music industry? I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. He's known around the world by many things. His changing monikers, Puffy, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, or his given name of Sean Combs. And while his own music career is marked with chart toppers and big hits, he's also worked with some of the biggest hip-hop and R&B stars, like the late Notorious B.I.G., Aretha Franklin, and Mariah Carey. In recent weeks, though, Diddy's name has been plastered in news headlines not for his next big hit, but for more serious allegations.
Breaking news tonight, Sean Diddy Combs has been arrested in a Manhattan hotel this evening after a grand jury indicted the music mogul.
Her second judge denied him bail as he faces federal sex trafficking and racketeering.
The music mogul is accused of threatening and abusing multiple victims over years.
It reads in the complaint, defendant Combs drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl at a house party. Many others were present but did nothing to stop it. Some participated in it. Combs has been allowed for years to conduct himself in this manner without any consequences.
Diddy has pleaded not guilty to the charges.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling confident. We're going to go get Mr. Combs out of jail.
A trial date is set for May 2025, but the reverberations of these charges are hitting now.
I'm Kim Osorio. I'm a hip-hop journalist. I've been covering hip-hop since the early 90s, and I am in the New York City tri-state area.
Well, Kim, welcome to The Take. There are so many places we could start with this story, given that there are allegations that span decades against Diddy. But I want to start in September of this year, when federal agents arrested the superstar. You were taping an episode of your podcast about the industry, Trigger Warning, when you got the breaking news alert. Tell me about that moment and your reaction.
I think the arrest was something we all knew was coming down. We were still shocked. I was still shocked. We were sitting there talking about some news that had broken online about something else. And I started to scroll and I saw Diddy's face all over my timeline. And I stopped the podcast. It felt like something big was happening. And right there, I read while we were taping the news that he had been arrested in New York.
Oh boy, I just saw a Diddy headline. I want to look at it. Y'all ready for this? What? Diddy has been taken into federal custody in connection with alleged sex trafficking investigation.
And I think the weekend before, we were seeing videos of him in New York online, having people come to him, giving out money, bags. We were watching his movements, because this is the biggest case we've seen come out of hip hop.
I think also because of the fact that it's not over, it keeps going. So let's talk about why it could really be the biggest. This arrest comes months after a series of civil lawsuits were filed against Diddy, including the one that arguably allowed all of this to come to light. In November of last year, the singer Cassie, Diddy's former girlfriend, alleged years of abuse, trafficking, and rape by the rapper. Now, her suit was settled, but she received really heavy criticism and skepticism from people online and in the media. A few months later, though, a video drops.
And it appears to corroborate Cassie's claims identically.
CNN releases footage in May from a Los Angeles hotel hallway that was caught in 2016.
New surveillance footage obtained exclusively by CNN appears to corroborate some of the allegations of abuse against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The video, captured on multiple cameras, shows Combs wearing only a towel, assaulting his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in a hallway at a Los Angeles hotel in March 2016.
Take us back to when you encountered that video. Tell us about the video.
Well, let me just say that seeing that video was actually the reason why Titi Torres and I decided to go forward with our podcast.
Your co-host.
We had been talking, yes, my co-host on Trigger Warning podcast. We had been talking for a couple of months about, being women in hip hop, having a voice, having perspective, having years of experience and wanting to put our voices out there. And when that video dropped of Diddy and Cassie, we got on the text thread and we were like, we need to say something as women. We need to speak about this. This is like breaking news now.
I read that complaint top to bottom when they put it out. And so I've never met Cassie. Let me say this. Never met Cassie. I've obviously met Puff over the years in my capacity as the editor-in-chief at The Source. But when I got that complaint and I read it, I believed it. I believed every word.
And it's something that, quite frankly, we felt like a lot of men who were covering this particular story were ignoring. But before that video dropped, Cassie filed her suit, like you said, last year, right? Months before that video dropped. The coverage was a lot different. Cassie had alleged this abuse, but people thought that she was out to get money, right? That was something that she was, that people were saying about her. Oh, this is, she's just trying to get money, being his ex-girlfriend. Oh, why was she in the relationship for so long? Like, there was all this conversation that was very critical of her decision to come forward. And as, we have seen, it's very hard for a woman to be able to make those allegations and step forward and tell her truth. That video changed everything because we saw it with our own eyes.
It really stopped people in their tracks, myself included. For those who haven't seen it, describe for us what's happening, because I think just the visuals alone, Diddy is in socks and a white towel, and that's it. And Cassie is trying to get away.
I mean, this video was horrific. He's dragging her. He's in his towel, obviously runs out wherever he was at. We're assuming his room, runs out, drags her, punches her. She's not responding. She's not fighting back. And I think that's why people were so disgusted. I mean, no abuse is something that we ever want to see, but she was just laying on the floor and he was pounding on her. So it was shocking. People were disgusted with this. And let me say something, Malika, because I think that, when we were talking about the coverage and how people were responding to her lawsuit before seeing this video, it was really interesting because the allegations that she was making in her original complaint, people hadn't heard before. These sex trafficking allegations, I think people were looking at it and lumping it all in like, oh, this is preposterous. This didn't happen. This sounds crazy. And when we saw that video, we were like, I know how I felt. I don't want to speak for the entire community, but I think it lended a lot of credibility to all of the other allegations that she made in her complaint.
Well, days after that video surfaced, Diddy recorded his own video. It's been taken down from Reels, but this was on social media.
My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
But since then, Diddy has been sued by more than 20 other people, and he's been charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and multiple counts of sexual assault. When his arrest and these charges came out, as you said, they sent shockwaves through the media and online spaces. But did they send shockwaves in the music and entertainment industry? Was it a surprise, or how much of a surprise do you think it really was?
I think it was a surprise. I think a lot of people in music and entertainment were shocked by the allegations, were shocked by the video. It's a tough conversation because as we learn of all of these cases, I don't want to downplay any of the victims who have gone through what they have gone through, but there's so many allegations now. And we're trying to weed through what's real, what's not real, because it almost seems unbelievable, the amount of people. For us to look at this and say, wait a minute, and we're looking at ourselves. We didn't know any of this was going on.
Yeah.
Especially as an insider. We're like, okay, no one came forward or no one tried to stop it. So I think that there are a lot of conversations being had now about the enabling of what could have been happening in the music industry.
Well, Kim, walk me through those two things because they can be separate or they can be the same thing. Did people in the inside know what was happening? You've met him. You didn't know what was happening. Talk to me about your remembrances of your interactions with him and what they were like.
I met him multiple times in my course as a journalist or serving as the editor-in-chief of The Source magazine. I put him on the cover of the magazine. I did stories and interviews with him, with his artist. I never saw this going on. My work as a journalist happened in the 90s and from 2000 to 2005. A lot of people said that it was a different time in your dealings with Diddy. Like the puffy to the Diddy is a thing. And this isn't just my experience. I've spoken to people who have also dealt with him or worked with him and didn't see any of this behavior. Now, in the 90s, he threw some of the biggest, hottest parties. But people now, it's almost like a joke when we're talking about it. Because people are like, oh, you were at a party. You were at a puffy party back in 1998. Like, those weren't the same type of parties. A lot of the parties that now, they're all getting convoluted, right? That's not what we experienced when we went to a puffy party in the 90s on his rise up, to become the mogul that he is.
Right. More with Kim after the break. Kim, this is a world that you are former editor-in-chief of The Source, the first woman editor-in-chief of The Source, a magazine that covers stories on hip-hop's greatest and arguably the magazine to cover hip-hop's greatest. You sued the magazine in 2005 after a Me Too experience before the Me Too movement became popular. Can you speak to the culture of silence in the industry around that time and what that was like for you?
Definitely. 2005 was a different time. I came forward and I filed a case against the magazine for sexual harassment, gender discrimination, defamation, and retaliation. At the time, I know how I felt. I felt like I was alone. I didn't feel like there was support out there. I got phone calls from people that were telling me to make it go away. People that weren't connected to the case just because they knew it was such a bad thing for the mainstream media to see going on within the culture. So it didn't feel like a moment of like, oh, you're standing up for yourself. There is a culture of silence. And there is also power in numbers. And I think with Cassie being able to come forward and file her claim against him and talk about what she went through, that really opened the door for all of these other claims.
The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward. Our team has had at this point more than 3,285 individuals contact us, with people claiming to have been victimized by Sean Combs.
So, when I went to trial, I was alone. And that was not easy because this wasn't a time where it was cool to say that these things happened to you. And a lot of the behavior that I talked about was going on in other companies and other publications or other record label, whatever, all running rampant. But it wasn't okay to be able to say, no, this is wrong. You had to just accept it. And then things changed throughout the years, right? More people started to come forward. Then the Me Too movement came, right? Like we're seeing sort of this change right now because of what's going on with Diddy. But when you really look at what we're dealing with, like look at how bad the allegations are.
And in your case, the allegations were sexual harassment, defamation, gender discrimination, retaliation, all pretty bad things. But you're saying this is, look at the scale of this, look at the spectrum of this. And even back then, for what you were alleging and filing suit against, you were then accused of airing the industry's dirty laundry. It sounds like people were saying, don't do this because the wider world doesn't need to know about it.
Yes, I won my my defamation claim because they accused me of trying to get money, of extortion. That is a tactic of a lot of people who are accused of these type of behaviors, right? It's a defense tactic, and so. It was something that I went through. It's something that I am familiar with, and I know how hard it is to speak up. It's not easy. It's embarrassing to go in front of the world and say this happened to me.
Yeah. So when you think back on your time, and then you think about what it must have taken for someone like Cassie and all of the other plaintiffs and accusers here, I wonder, can you put us in those shoes for those of us who haven't been there? What is that actually like personally?
I think personally, as I stated, it's really embarrassing. You got to have really tough skin. People are going to attack your credibility. And it's particularly for women, right? Who, and in my situation, I was working a job. I was married to my job. I love my job. When you look at Cassie's situation, she was in a romantic relationship with Diddy. So now you have everyone saying, well, why did she stay? And if you don't understand domestic violence and how that works, like that's a whole different topic of conversation, right? So after you go through all of that, now to be able to come forward, it's a big step for many people, many victims who have gone through what they've gone through, to now have to, and usually when you come out of it, you want to be done with it. You don't want to revisit it. So that's another thing, right? She wasn't in the relationship anymore. So to be able to go back there, right? Because part of your healing is to like wipe it out, right? You're just kind of moving forward, you're dealing with it, but it's not something you want to stay in.
Well, finally, Kim, it's hard to separate Diddy and his success from hip hop as a genre and its success. Last year, New York City Mayor Eric Adams awarded him the key to the city. Celebrities wanted to be at his infamous white parties, at all of his parties. And under his record label, Bad Boy, he mentored, he helped launch artists from Usher to Justin Bieber. But as these allegations have come out, how far has hip hop culture and the media around it since the 90s and the early 2000s when it comes to believing survivors, reporting on accusations fairly and accurately, and then stamping out this kind of behavior in the industry as a whole come? How far?
It's hard to say how far it's come because there are other examples of women who have gone through their own traumatic situations within hip hop. And it's not just exclusive to hip hop. This is happening in all industries, right? But me being in hip hop and knowing these particular stories, right? There's examples of powerful men who are still in control, who have millions of dollars, who have done things to women. And because it hasn't been called out, because those women maybe haven't filed cases, because they may not have the money and the resources to be able to go up against such a powerhouse. It's almost like it didn't happen. And that, I think, is something that even, I struggle with as I'm covering the culture and reporting on things, because I look at people in positions of power and I'm like, well, what about all those accusations against that person? A lot of these people are in control and have relationships with other people. And there's again, this culture of silence where it's like, don't ask, don't tell. So, it's something I think many women in the industry struggle with. Just imagine if you're somebody who's working and, something horrible has happened to you between you and this very powerful person. And now you have to watch them pretty much run the industry.
And get bigger and bigger.
And that you work in. Right. You got to watch and you know what that person did to you. So, or maybe not just to you, but maybe to multiple women. And there are people in positions of power still in this industry that have multiple accusations from women against them, or, you know what I mean? Or violent accusations. And we've allowed it to stay in our culture. And I think it's going to take not just women speaking out, but really a lot of men calling other men out.
Do you think this could then be a turning point to get men to speak out and to allow this culture to change, whether it's in hip hop or entertainment or other industries?
I think it should be. I think if we look back at Diddy's history, we'll see that there were a number of things that happened in his career that we should have questioned maybe, and we did not. And he came out of situations unscathed. Now, I am not saying that he is guilty of certain things, but we know there were numerous controversies he was involved in the 90s. And I think every time he came out of that incident, he was more powerful. Throughout his career, there have been so many things that have happened, and we've watched him build his company into what it's become and be such a successful business mogul in the culture. He is one of probably a very few men within hip hop that can claim all of that success.
Yeah.
I think because of who Diddy is within not just hip hop culture, but in entertainment, this is a case that will definitely change things. We're all watching this play out. And I think, and I hope that it changes things for the better.
And that's The Take. How did you react when you first heard the Diddy allegations? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to catch more episodes like this, make sure you're following our YouTube playlist. That's where you'll find all of our recent content, updated regularly so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you stay in the loop with all things Al Jazeera English. We'll see you tomorrow.